So a very, very classic interview question that obviously isn't just confined to medical school interviews is, what is your biggest weakness? Now, I think most people subconsciously know how to not answer this question, and we're going to analyse that a bit in this video. And actually, I think it's best to start this video by addressing some of the things that you absolutely should not do, and then we can think about some ways in which we could maybe tackle this question more sensibly. First, absolute no-no with this question is say or imply that you have no weaknesses, because you are a cynical, miserable, flawed human just like the rest of us. I really don't want to work with anyone who doesn't think they have any weaknesses and thinks they are perfect, and neither does your medical school interviewer. And I think simply just being familiar with a few of your weaknesses, whether you've addressed them or not, off the top of your head, is quite an important thing to do. So right off the bat, I am untidy, I do not eat or look after myself particularly well all the time, and I burden myself with way too many extracurricular activities to the point where it becomes pathological and I can't do any of them properly. And I also get terrified when someone asks me a question on the ward round that I do know I know the answer to, but I get flustered anyway. The second thing, and I think the thing that we're often told to do, is twist a negative into a positive. Try and be clever. No, because it's cheesy and it's cliche, and the interviewer will have heard all of these examples before. Perfectionism, right, is the big one. I'm such a perfectionist that I spend ages on a task until I've got it just the way I want it. Perfectionism is not an admirable trait. And the other element is that you're going to be no more a perfectionist than the 99 other Type A medical applicants sat in the waiting room outside. The third approach that you could take, that I don't recommend, is lying, and that is because medical interviewers are generally going to be pretty smart people, right? And they're going to be easily smart enough to see whatever deception you put forward. It's generally very, very easy to tell when someone is lying to you in a pressured interviewer situation. And it's also very, very easy, if you've prepared an answer, to simply bat it away and ask you for a second weakness, because you'll then have to face the cognitive demand of preparing these lies to cover multiple weaknesses, and the burden of that is just going to be too much for most people to manage under the stress of an interview. The other thing you have to remember is that you're at a medical school interview. Honesty, integrity and probity are all things that the interviewer is going to actively be screening you for, and if you give a hint that you're perhaps not quite telling the truth, that's going to reflect very negatively on you. And so all of this begs the question, you know, Ollie, you've talked about all these ways not to handle these types of questions. How do I actually have a chance at succeeding? In my thinking, I think the best way of doing this is be honest and give a genuine weakness that you recognize in yourself that you want to improve, with the one caveat that you don't give a weakness that makes you fundamentally unsuitable for the position for which you're applying. That would just be shooting yourself in the foot. So any gaping flaw that makes you obviously unsuitable for medical school is going to be a no. So like, I'm a compulsive liar, or I strangle puppies in my spare time. Nothing like that. Pick something normal. And honestly, I think these questions can just be answered with a bit of decent reflective thinking. So in order to kind of work on yourself and improve on your weaknesses, firstly, you need to recognize that you have a problem, right? So think about what problems you have, then think about one you might want to change. You then need to understand why it's a problem. Why is this situation pathological? What are the consequences that are actually causing you some harm? How is it manifesting in your life? Next, you'll need to set a goal of some kind. So what steps am I going to take now that I've recognized I have a problem and why it's a problem? How am I going to attempt to fix the problem? And is that set of goals realistic? Am I going to be able to carry through and do these things? And then if that's all gone well, you can hopefully measure against some set of criteria how well you're doing. Are you getting more sleep? Are you looking after yourself? Do you feel happier? Are you able to fall asleep easier at night? You're not kept awake by stress? So let's just use an example of mine, right? If I was thinking about a weakness of myself and I had to present it, I'd give the example that in my undergraduate degree, I did molecular biology at Newcastle University, and I was the stereotypical crammer student. So what that means is I wouldn't start preparing for my exams until maybe 3 or 4 days before the date of the actual exam. And in some cases, even the morning of the exam, I remember starting my revision, and I would just relentlessly front load everything into short-term memory and then rely on that just for the next kind of 4 or 5 hours to get me through the exam, and then it would immediately all fall out again. And the thing is that this practice actually worked. You know, for better or worse, I got a first class degree. I did well on virtually all of my exams. I was either scoring firsts or high 2-1s. Because the way those exams worked, it was a mixture of multiple choice questions, short answers and essays, and the depth you needed across the whole course was never that much. There were basically small topics, small islands where you needed to know a lot of depth, but beyond that, a few surface level facts would get you through most things. Particularly in essays, I would just remember, you know, 30 or 40 discrete facts, and then during the planning phase, when I was actually in the exam and thinking about what I was going to write, I would just kind of splurge all those facts onto my planning sheet and then construct an essay around those facts in a frame that kind of allowed me to get them all in there. So I'd do that, I'd score pretty well, and then, as I say, I'd forget all that knowledge in the next couple of days, would retain very little of it. But why is this a weakness? It maybe wasn't in that situation, but now that I'm at med school, I couldn't do something like that. If I was in the interview situation, I'd say that I'd done some reading, done some research, asked people. The volume of content is what makes medical school difficult, and knowing that I was a crammer, I would have to completely change my learning style in order to handle that new volume of material. And the other element to this is that that's just not the type of doctor I want to be. I want to be a competent medical practitioner who knows their stuff and is able to apply it to help patients. It's going to be no good if I forget all the detail that I've learned immediately after the exam, because ultimately it's not going to be me that suffers, although I might suffer. In the long run, it would be whatever patients I was dealing with. So it really would be irresponsible for me not to get a handle on my learning, and that's what I did when I came to medical school. I had to adjust. I'm very pleased I did. But that doesn't mean that that part of my life when I was cramming wasn't useful to me, because I've seen both sides of that now. But I feel a lot better for it. I feel a lot less stressed about tests most of the time. My fact recall is a lot better than it was. So you can see that's that framework of I recognised I had a problem from having done my research. I've just addressed there why it would be a problem and the steps that I took to deal with it, which included things like trying out different revision resources. I started drawing a lot more, diagramming, going to group study sessions, going to seminars and optional teaching in my free time to stay on top of everything. You really, when you come to med school, have to take control of your own learning, and that was a really valuable experience for me. So there's a kind of little scenario that I would maybe talk through if I was going to a job interview, say, and they asked me that question. I think that's the example I would use. But ultimately with any of these questions, the trick is just be honest, show integrity. Don't pick something mind-blowingly stupid, just pick something unrelated to medicine that is a genuine weakness and talk about that. Do that and you'll be fine. So thanks very much for watching, guys. Please be sure to hit that like button for me, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to go and check out PostGradMedic.com for more free videos and articles just like this one. Make sure to tap the notification bell if you haven't already to make sure you're notified when new videos come out. Take care and I'll see you next time.